Hello, I'm Mr. Phillips. Welcome to this English unit. In this unit, we're going to be focused on journalistic writing, and we're going to start today's lesson by identifying some of the features of a newspaper report. This is going to be really helpful for later on in the unit when we come to write our own newspaper reports. So, okay, let's start. In this lesson, you will need an exercise book or some paper, a pen or a pencil, and a ruler or some sort of straight edge that you can draw straight lines with. If you don't have any of these things with you right now, please pause the video, run off and get yourself these bits of equipment that you need. Okay, well done for coming back. In today's lesson, we're going to start by discussing the purpose, audience, and language and layout of journalistic writing. We're then going to look at an example of this text type and identify the features in an opening paragraph and then the chronological recount paragraph. And lastly, we're finished with your independent task. So before we start, what is journalistic writing? Have you ever heard of that type of text before? Maybe you can see a word within a word, perhaps. I can see journalist in journalistic. Maybe that could give you a clue as to the text type that we are about to be looking at today. What did journalists do exactly? Have a little think. What do they write? Pause the recording and write out anything that you might know about journalistic writing. Off you go. Okay, super, well done for coming back. I'm sure you've got so many fantastic ideas to share. So journalistic writing is a text written by a journalist. So a piece of writing that's been written by a journalist. And that's a type of a job. So someone works as a journalist, they collect, write, present, edit, or comment on news or current affairs. Current affairs means things that are currently happening in the world right now. News is a recount of current significant events, so it retells what has happened. And written news reports can be found in newspapers, magazines, and even online. Also, we have news reports in different ways. Have you seen these different types of written news before? So we can see news written on paper, we can see in a newspaper. Then we can also see news can be written and displayed on a mobile phone or on a tablet or even a computer. And these days, a lot of people choose to read their news on electronic forms, such as on their phones or on their computers rather than on paper or in a newspaper. We're now going to think about what the purpose, audience, and language and layout of journalistic writing or a newspaper report. But before we do that, we need to think about these 4 keywords mean. Okay, so can you write down on a piece of paper or in your textbook what you think these 4 keywords mean? Pause the video and have a go. Okay, well done for coming back. So let's go through some of these definitions and check and see if you've got something similar. So let's start with purpose. So purpose is the reason a text is written. The reason the author or writer or the journalist in this instance has written the text. Okay, the second one, audience. Okay, the audience is a type of people that read a text. So different text will attract and be appropriate for different groups of people. For example, a picture book might be the audience of a picture book might be for young children, whereas a very formal scientific report might be more appropriate for adults or people interested in science, perhaps. Well, okay, now let's move on to our third one, language. Okay, so language is the vocabulary or the words that have been used as part of the piece of writing, okay? And then finally, the layout. How is a text organized and structured? This is often how it might look on a page, okay? And that's really important to remember how that piece of writing might look on a page. Okay, so now let's think about how we can relate all that information and link it to our newspaper report. So, can you write down what you think the purpose, who do you think the audience is, what sort of language and what sort of layout would you expect of a newspaper report? Pause the video and record some ideas yourself. Okay, super. Let's go through some of the answers and hopefully you've got some similar answers too. Okay, so like we mentioned already, a newspaper report contains news, which is all about things that are happening currently in the world, that are significant, that are important for people to know about. Okay, so that's our purpose, to provide information about current events. Okay, what about our audience then? Well, hopefully you wrote down something similar to this. Anyone interested in the subject? And this could be anyone, okay? And sometimes news reports might be might be more appropriate for children. If you've ever read a newspaper, such as First News, or we can have newspapers that are more appropriate for adults. Okay, moving on to language. So language is formal language and journalistic phrases. In a newspaper report, normally the language that's chosen can be quite formal, and it might include some journalistic phrases. And we'll have a look at what that means in a little bit more detail later on. And then finally, layout, the structure of a report. Now, this will vary with each report, but we're going to follow a particular structure today, and when we write our own anyway. And in this example, we're going to have a look at, so the layout we're going to be using is a headline at the start, followed by an opening paragraph, a chronological recount of paragraph, a quote paragraph, and lastly, a closing paragraph. But there's lots of different structures you can use. But most newspaper reports will start with a headline and some form of opening paragraph. We're now going to have a look at an example of an opening paragraph of a newspaper report. Okay, so I've written this example about Romans raid Britain. Okay, you might recognize this from some of the history learning you did last half term. Okay, so I'm going to read this opening paragraph out loud and you can follow along on your screen, or you might want to pause the recording and read it to yourself. Romans raid Britain. Yesterday afternoon, the Roman army landed on the vast shores of Britain. Led by Emperor Claudius, he commanded his large army to begin conquering the abundant lands. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to identify some of the key features in this opening paragraph. Okay, the features are listed on the right-hand side of the screen. We're going to try and find the headline. We're going to then identify the 4 W's. So who, what, when, and where. Okay, so let's start with the headline. Can you pause the recording and point to the headline on the screen? Oh, super, well done. Hopefully you pointed to Romans raid Britain. So the headline is a bit like a title, and it's right at the beginning of the newspaper article. Okay, and because it tells the reader what the newspaper report is going to be about. It's also a really useful way of hooking your reader in or engaging them and making them read the rest of your report. Now, I want you to try and find who is the newspaper report about? Okay, can you pause the video and find out? Well done. It is about the Roman army invading Britain. Well done. So it is about Roman army and Emperor Claudius. Super. Oh, I'm just going to skip back. Now, I want you to find the what. Okay, so what is this newspaper report about? You might identify a few different whats in this paragraph. So have a go. Okay, so there's a few different things that happen in this part of this report. Okay, so we can see that the Roman army landed. Okay, that's a what? He commanded, okay, his large army to begin conquering. Okay, that's another incident of what is happening here. Okay. Next then, we've got the when. Okay, so I want you to have a little think now, is when did this happen? Okay. Pause the video and have a little think. Super, well done for finding that out, okay? So when is exactly where you said, okay? So yesterday afternoon, super, okay? This, and often news is reported on either on the day that something happens or sometimes the day after. So the word yesterday would be used in a report to describe something that happened. Lastly, I want you to find the where. Where did this incident occur? Pause the recording and point to where. Well done. It was on the vast shores of Britain, okay? Let's have a little look. Exactly, in Britain, well done. So here is all our answers. Excellent job. Well done if you found all of those different features. You should be very proud of yourself. That was fantastic. Now you've looked at an example of an opening paragraph, I want you to think about this question. What is the purpose of the opening paragraph? Remember, purpose means why has it been written? Or why do we need an opening paragraph as part of our newspaper reports? Pause the recording and either have a think or write yourself some notes. I think the opening paragraph is really, really important to the newspaper report. Yeah, so it's really, really important because it summarizes the key information. So it doesn't go into lots and lots of detail, but it gives a brief overview of what happened as part of the event or the incident. Okay, it also helps the reader decide whether to read the rest of the text. A little bit like the blurb on the back of a book might help you decide whether or not you want to read the whole book. You might, as a reader, read the opening paragraph of a newspaper report and based on that, you will decide whether or not you're going to read the rest of it too. It might interest you and you might read on, or you might think, oh, that's not really relevant to me. I don't want to read on. So we need to make sure when we write our own openings, that is really, really engaging and it makes the reader want to read the rest of our report. We're now going to have a look at the second paragraph of a newspaper report. Okay, here it is. So this is the chronological recount paragraph, and chronological means in time order. So this paragraph is telling us, retelling the event in time order or the order that it happened. And it goes into a lot more detail than the opening paragraph. I'm going to read it through out loud, and you can either follow on the screen, or if you would prefer, you can pause the recording and read through it yourself. Yesterday afternoon, the Roman army led by Emperor Claudius arrived on the shores of Britain around 3 p.m. for approximately an hour before they moved inland to begin to set up camp. This is supported by an eyewitness, a local fisher person, who was out catching fish for his people who live close by at around 2:30 p.m. Therefore, the evidence suggests that the Roman army entered Britain between 2:30 and 3 p.m. When the Romans arrived in Britain, they began to set up tents and finding food for their soldiers. Reports indicate that the Romans have not begun conquering nearby villages. However, it is thought that the Romans are here to take over Britain. Okay. So, we're now going to look at this paragraph in a little bit more detail, and I try to identify some of the key features that are listed on the right-hand side on your screen. So, we're going to identify any timings, formal conjunctions, and journalistic phrases. Don't worry if you don't know what some of those mean right now, because I'll be going over those in some more detail as we come to find them. So firstly, let's try and find any timings, any references to when these different events happened. Pause the recording, read through the paragraph again, and see if you can identify any reference to time or timings. Off you go. So we should have found yesterday afternoon as a timing. We should have found 3 p.m. We should have found hour. We've got 2:30, 2:30 again, and 3 p.m. Well done if you found all of those examples. Now we're going to reread the passage again. Okay, and I want you to see if you can find any formal conjunctions. Okay, and conjunctions are used at the beginning of a sentence, followed by a comma. For example, furthermore, comma, and then your sentence would continue. They link sentences together and they create cohesion. This means it can help our writing to flow, and they also provide a really good and help us form a formal tone in our writing too. These types of conjunctions are found in formal pieces of writing. Let's look at the 3 different types. Okay, so here we go. On your screen, you should have everything about a formal conjunction. So we've got 3 different types. We've got the and conjunctions. These add more information. So we've got in addition, furthermore, moreover, also. Then we move into the second column. We've got but conjunctions. We've got however, nevertheless, despite this, although. These but conjunctions show a contrast or 2 sentences being contrast or opposite to each other. And then we have casual conjunctions, which show one sentence causing something else to happen or one event causing another event. So we've got as a result, consequently, therefore, something in order to something. Okay, so that one is a little bit different because we need something before and after that one now. Now, can you pause the recording and write down any examples you can think of that would come under those 3 different types of conjunctions? Okay, think of any more. Have a go. Well, hopefully you were able to name a few others. Well done for doing that. Okay, you'll notice on the middle column with the but conjunctions with although, okay, you'll notice it's a little bit different because it needs a subordinated conjunction. So it needs to be followed by a subordinating clause and then a comma. And lastly, we've got casual conjunctions as a result, consequently, and therefore. Okay, well done if you thought of any of those. Keep in your head because we're going to use them later on when we look at our paragraph, and hopefully you're going to be using them in your own writing too. So, can you now find any formal conjunctions in this paragraph? Fantastic. Well, hopefully you have, okay, because there is 3, okay, and they're highlighted in blue on the screen. So the first one we've got is therefore, in addition, and however. Well done if you found those. Okay, so next we're going to look for journalistic phrases. What is a journalistic phrase? A journalistic phrase is a phrase or a sentence starter which are often used in newspaper reports and show where the information has come from. So as journalists, we have to investigate and find out information, and these phrases show where that information comes from. For instance, reports suggest that would tell us that you found some information from some source of report. And police reports indicate, which suggests you've got the information from a police report or something that the police have told you. They also show the information has not been confirmed. So sometimes journalists aren't completely sure about whether something is true or not. So they might use something a little bit different to show this. So they might use a journalistic phrase to show that. It is thought that would show that people have said this, but that the journalists aren't completely sure if this is completely true. And also allegedly means some people are saying this or some people think this, but we're not completely sure yet either. Now, can you look at the next paragraph? This is a paragraph we've been looking at already, and see if you can find these journalistic phrases in this paragraph. Let's pause the video and have a go. Super. Hopefully you managed to find some, and if you didn't, they were highlighted in blue to help you out, in purple, should I say. This was quite tricky, so it's absolutely fine if you didn't find any. We can work through it together. So I've got, this is supported by, okay. Then we've got evidence suggests, we've got reports indicate, and we've got another, it is thought. We've got quite a few there. Fantastic. Well done for finding all of those. So now we've read our chronological recount paragraph. Hopefully you can answer this question up on the screen. Okay, let me just see. There you go. So what is the purpose of a chronological recount paragraph? Well, hopefully you can begin to think about some of the answers. So some of the things we can think about is that it provides a detailed information about the event. It goes into a lot of detail than the opening paragraph that just gives a summary. It also recounts the events in a chronological order so the reader knows exactly what has happened and when. And it just helps the reader understand what happened during the event too. Now, it's time for your independent task. We would like you to write down the features of journalistic writing. We've looked at lots of features today already, so hopefully you've got a few locked up in your head. This is your opportunity to retrieve all your learning and see what you can remember. Can you include an example of each feature? Think carefully about the layout or the structure of a report. Can you remember what those different paragraphs were referred to as? What sort of language do we need to include? And what punctuation might we see in a newspaper report? One way I might suggest you do this and complete your task would be through a mind map. Okay, so then you can focus on structure, then you can focus on formal conjunctions, for instance, and then timings. There's a few to help you there. Or you might want to write some subheadings or some headings and list those features underneath. It's entirely up to you. You be creative. Maybe you might want to do it on the Google Docs and then share it with your class teacher. It's entirely up to you. So on the screen, on the right-hand side of my screen, there is an example of what I've started to do. Okay, I've made a start where what I've done is a mind map. So you can see that I've got the features of journalistic writing in the middle, and then I've got my ideas, and then I might expand on those ideas that I have too. So I've written structure, then I've written the different aspects of structure, formal conjunctions. I've written the 3 different types of formal conjunctions too that we've learned about today. So that's just an example. If you want to lay it out, as I said, in a different way, please feel free to. Okay, lastly, so the agenda for today was to look at the purpose, audience, language, and layout of a newspaper report. We've identified the features of an opening paragraph and the chronological recount of a paragraph, and now it's your time for you to complete your independent task. Retrieve all that learning from today and see what you can remember. If you can't remember anything, you can just rewind the recording and remind yourself. Super. Congratulations, you finished your first lesson in this unit. Well done for all your hard work today. If you would like to, please share your work with your parents or carer or whoever looks after you at home. I will like to see your learning if possible. So if you're able to share your learning from today, your mind maps or however you presented, can you share that with your class teacher perhaps? Maybe that might be the piece of work that you're most proud of this week. I will see you in next lesson where we'll be learning more about journalistic writing and newspaper reports. Super. Well done today. See you next time. Bye.